Welcome to the True Diversity film series, Standing in Solidarity. My name is Latoya Dawson, Senior Marketer Manager here at NJPAC. Instruments, vocals, and rhythms of diverse cultures and heritages blend to create new musical forms. Much of what we listen to today can be traced back hundreds of years to the African slave trade in the Americas and in the Caribbean. Enslaved people influenced the indigenous music of the region with drumming, upbeat rhythms, call and response, and more. To this day, African music underpins Latin American styles such as bachata, cumbia, samba, and reggaeton. In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, Standing in Solidarity will discuss the influence of African slaves on the creation and legacies of Latin American music and dance forms. I would like to thank the NJPAC Latino Advisory Committee, as well as Rutgers University Newark professors and the Latin Jazz Alliance, who provided recommendations for the panel. I also hope you were able to watch the film Buena Vista Social Club on the link. This film also informs the discussion this evening. This social justice series is part of our Standing in Solidarity initiative. We are in our fourth season of this social justice series. The purpose of this series is to bring our community together and to encourage everyone to take part in the movement to ensure civil rights for all. On our website, you can find archived prior social justice panel discussions, as well as resources that will help you take action. We are also happy to have our advisors, Newark NAACP and New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Newark Arts, and the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center at Rutgers University, Newark, Director, Africana Institute at Essex County College, and Asian American Arts Alliance in ACLU, New Jersey. Now, NJPAC would like to offer a land acknowledgement. The language we are using was created with consultation and guidance from Chief Dwayne Perry of the Ramapo Lenape Munsee tribe and Oleana Whispering Dove of the Eastern Talsaga Algonquin descendant. We are grateful to them for their generosity, wisdom, and labor to craft these words. We, the Lenape, original benefactors of land, once ripened and cultivated with attentiveness to the Creator and her ascendancy, express everlasting gratitude to our Creator for the traditional ancestral jurisdiction of the Munsee, Esopus, Canarsie, Capsee, Weirpos, Siwane, and Weequahi, jointly known together today as the Ramapo and Nanticoke Lene Lenape. We are the Lenape Hoking today and will be for the remaining days of tomorrow, keepers of the past. Let this moment of recognition be a monument of action. Let it be the beginning of hope for our Turtle Island and for the Ramapo Lenape, the Munsee people of whose land we now trod. Here on this land, in this place of the Munsee, we acknowledge our debt to those who have come before us, to those who have been denigrated and suffered for the sake of cultural and land appropriation. Let this, our land acknowledgement, be the beginning of our return to unity. Let us be the guardians of the water, the air, and the earth, the four-legged, the flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the mammal people, and the green. Let us now stand, lifting our humanity and rapturing with Earth's conscious as guardians of harmony and kindness. This acknowledgement demonstrates our ongoing commitment as a community working to dismantle the continued legacies of colonialism, oppression, and systematic racism. We offer a pledge of social justice, awakening, and education in order to raise the level of awareness and to ultimately strengthen the communal fabric which includes outreach with our indigenous neighbors. In this way, our collective voices can disrupt the patterns of social injustice through reverence of the native people who share their land and by revitalizing indigenous history through indigenous specific programming. I would also like to thank our corporate sponsor, PSEG, for their ongoing support of our social justice initiatives. Here to extend warm greetings from PSEG is Bianca Reyes, Supplier Diversity Manager and DEI Champion. She is responsible for the overall strategy development, implementation, and management of the Supplier Diversity Program. Develop and manage a long-term diverse portfolio and is a graduate of Rutgers University, Newark. Bianca has over 15 years of procurement, supplier relationship, and project management experience to this position. Bianca has worked at PSEG for 11 years in the procurement organization. She is an active board member of the Adelante Business Resource Group at PSEG, whose mission is to be a resource for employees at all levels who want to gain a greater understanding of or contribute to the Hispanic Latino experience and perspective. Adelante works to communicate the collective needs of PSEG, Hispanic and Latino employees, and the Hispanic Latino community. Welcome, Bianca.
Welcome, everyone, to True Diversity Film Series, an exploration of the African roots and the Afro-Latino culture through dance, music, culture, and history event. I'm Bianca Reyes, Supplier Diversity Manager at PSEG. We are the very proud sponsors of the PSEG True Diversity Film Series. PSEG, which has been headquartered in Newark for over 120 years, is thrilled to be a longtime supporter of NJPAC. We've been a part of the community that has backed this anchored cultural institution ever since it first opened almost 25 years ago. And the True Diversity Film Series represents the best of that relationship. Additionally, the PSEG Foundation has partnered with NJPAC and is proud supporter of the Standing in Solidarity program, which includes the True Diversity Film Series. This film series is a reflection of PSEG's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially here in Newark, where we are more than just another utility and more than just another company. We're proud of our commitment as citizens of Newark and as citizens of New Jersey. A tremendous part of that commitment is our support for organizations such as NJPAC and what that support means for diversity, for education, and for the arts. During this time of so many renewed conversations around race and justice, PSEG and the PSEG Foundation has committed millions of dollars and launched multiple initiatives aimed at ensuring that everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or religion, is treated equally and equitably in our company, in our community, and in our nation. In order to continue to emphasize the importance of providing support in such areas of critical community need, the PSEG Foundation has realigned its given strategy under 3 pillars: environmental sustainability, social justice, and equity and economic empowerment. When one of us is impacted in the community, we all feel the impact. That's why it's essential that we all join together to act and build a framework of equity, compassion, and respect throughout the many diverse communities we represent that will truly benefit us all. On behalf of PSEG and the PSEG Foundation, we believe that our longstanding support for diversity, education, and the arts help us contribute to that ideal as well. Now, it is my honor to welcome all of you to this important and timely event on African roots in Latino culture, music, and dance. Thank you for being here this evening, and please enjoy the discussion.
Thank you, Bianca. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening's discussion, Ms. Neda Martinez, Director of the Media Management Graduate Program and Associate Professor of Professional Practice in Media Management at the New School. Fellowships include the 2023 and 24 Sundance Adobe Women to Watch, the 2023-24 Mellon Initiative for Inclusive Faculty Excellence, the 2022-23 Robert L. Hellbriner Center for Capitalism Studies at the New School for Social Research Fellow, and the 2022-23 Sundance Documentary Producing Lab Fellow. Everyone, please help me to welcome Ms. Neda Martinez.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I am also a longtime cultural worker and creative producer, founder of Havana Harlem, a project that seeks to build bridges amongst diverse populations and also lift the work and introduce the work of many artists in new settings, such as Roman Diaz and Michelle Rosewoman, for example. Today's discussion, as I hope we all enjoyed and saw, the Buena Vista Social Club. And throughout my career, there's nothing that has been more of the biggest gift, which is learning directly from artists. Artists who illuminate, artists who are the trailblazers, artists who challenge staid notions, and to help us think in new ways. So with the Buena Vista Social Club, we are going to think about some themes around the body, dance, and resistance. We're going to think about the drum as a vehicle for communication and communion. We're going to interrogate notions of authenticity and identity. And for that, we'll have with us some esteemed panelists, Andrea, Sophia, and Juan, who I will cue to the floor just momentarily. But just really quickly, the Buena Vista Social Club, as you saw, was located in a neighborhood called Marianao. It was a social club and organized much like the Cabildos, the oftentimes secret African ethnic associations in colonial Cuba. We had a time when slavery and racial discrimination against Afro-Cubans was truly institutionalized. Thus, building on the work of scholars like Robert Ferris Thompson, Charles C. Dawson, Dr. Martha Moreno Vega, we're gonna not so much dissect the film, but use it as a platform and a point of departure to further roll into these ideas around sacred African thought, belief, concepts, and practice as central not only to the formation of Cuban society and popular culture, but society as large, as Dr. Robert Ferris Thompson notes. I'd also like to dedicate this talk, building on the landing acknowledgement, to the countless souls lost in the mid-Atlantic slave trade, and to those persons who survived, formerly enslaved humans who survived to make a way for us, the over 130 million African descendants, 1/4 of the total population today in the United States, which approximately 6 million of us are currently identifying as Afro-Latino. So thinking about dance, I would like to invite Andrea Thompson, who is a dancer and educator, to introduce herself quickly. And Andrea, would you come to the floor?
Good evening, Nadia. How are you?
Good, thank you.
It's so good to be here, and I will give a brief introduction. As Nadia said, my name is Andrea Thompson. I'm a dancer, a dance instructor, and a performer, and I have over 2 decades of experience, particularly in Afro-Cuban and Afro-Brazilian folkloric forms. I've been fortunate enough to travel all over the world, being a patron, a student, a performer, and an observer of just the wonderful impact and the diverse impact of the continent of Africa. And I can't wait till we get into the discussion this evening.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to learning from you. I'd like to bring Sofia Rey to the floor, who will be introducing herself and also helping us to complicate things in the spirit of James Baldwin, complicating things, making things messy, illuminating and guiding the way, especially as it speaks to notions of authenticity and identity. Sophia, would you come on the floor and introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everybody. I'm very, very glad to be here. Thank you so much for this discussion. And thank you, Neda, for leading the conversation. My name is Sofia Rey. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm a vocalist, performer, composer, producer. And I have covered many, many styles of music in my work. Since I started when I was 9 years old in the Teatro Colón Theater back home. But in any of these different instances, as a performer, as a writer, I have found my musical soul in Latin American folk music, and I'm still learning daily from artists and expressions of this kind of music. I managed to tour the world with my bands and with different projects, recorded 6 albums under my name, got a couple of Grammy nominations, and I hope to be able to share my music at some point with you. I am currently a professor of performance and musicianship at the Clive Davis Institute of New York University. And there I created a class that I felt was important for our students, our young students, called New Perspectives in Latin Music, where we explore this very broad stylistic diversity of Latin American music today and trace it back to some of its most important styles, connecting it with these newest manifestations. So glad to be here and to start this conversation.
Thank you, Sophia. And of course, we can't have a conversation about the legacy of music and African music in particular without the drum as a vehicle for communion and communication. So I would like to invite Juan Cartagena to the floor to introduce himself. He is a performer, musician, and musicologist. Juan, would you please join us?
Thank you so much, Nadia. Saludos y bendiciones a todos, y todes y todas. So thank you so much for the invitation. I really look forward to this conversation. I am a performer, composer, instructor, and researcher, and I write about the drum music of Puerto Rico. That means the drum music of both bomba and the drum music of plena. And with my wife, Nana Hernandez, I direct a group called Segunda Quimbamba, which is based right here in Jersey City, New Jersey, and it performs the drum music, and we teach these music and dance and drumming to generations of students in Jersey City. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Juan. So I think I'd like to offer a couple of just framing remarks, some things that came to mind, history and context before I start kind of diving in with some questions. So, you know, Cuba is the big island. Cuba is the big island, and then sugar changed the world, you know, so that African descendants are here because we are part of a legacy of extractive capitalism and slavery, as you know, and that these concepts are intertwined. Moreover, there was, after the uprisings of the Haitian Revolution with Toussaint Louverture, you know, it sparked, you know, just a flurry of activity, of resistance, and really struggle around ideas of freedom and liberation. Remember, this is clearly at a time when enslaved Black humans were not considered fully men. So that mambo, just to kind of talk one musical genre, one form, you know, literally means conversations with the gods. It's a word derived from the Congo, from the Kilongo language. And in the drum speaks, you know, we know that the drum is also sacred as a convener and a communicator, but it has this ability, this uncanny ability to have tones and pitch and texture that mimic the human voice, and thus they can also mourn and inspire. But the film itself is also sometimes is a bit problematic. So I just want to get that out of the way real quick. So the film came to us at a time about a decade after the collapse of the Soviet Union and their disinvestment in Cuba. So Cuba found itself by necessity to open itself up to tourism. And we know that that then also renders us vulnerable to power asymmetries and kind of probably doing things that we would not want to because we need to survive and put food on the table. And so that the film, from its positionality, I would like to, bring forth like this notion of Professor Wilson Valentin that he calls it the Columbus effect, because as you will know, the Roy Cooter, who is a lovely soul and a dedicated artist, his role is also exaggerated in the film, and he's positioned as a discoverer, right? And so that brings to us ideas of colonization, and we're in this moment, right? This global moment of Black Lives Matter and decolonizing everything, curricula and white supremacist structures. So that truly there's this hero in the film who's relegated to what would be in the literature like a footnote, who is the one who salvaged the project, because as we saw initially, or we didn't see it initially, but in the many writings around this piece, there was a desire to bring artists from Mali to have this form of cultural exchange. They were denied their visas. And it was an Afro-Cuban scholar and musician who was doing research anyway and looking to kind of revive some sort of Afro-Cuban all-stars. And his name is Juan de Marcos Gonzalez, right? Who really saved the day and saved the project by bringing these persons to light. And so I guess that's just a little bit of context, as well as to understand that through the transatlantic slave trade, that sugar did change the world, like I said earlier, and that there were these different moments in history where there was just movement. Either persons were buying their freedom. There was also at least a centuries long of continued illegal slave trafficking, even though it was not supposed to be happening to Cuba and Puerto Rico and other places. And so that this Black cultural memory is hugely intact in Cuba, not only because of the size of Cuba, it received over 800,000 enslaved persons, but the relevance too, of like constant refreshing of the memory amongst, these cabildos. So that I think I would like to start with Andrea, because the body is so central. We were talking about human bodies captured and taken illegally for the enrichment of the Europeans, nations, and the United States as well. So what do you, I guess in your expertise, how do you see these music types of the son and the rumba, etc., as part of the basis, in terms of movement and dance and how it informs liberation among Black peoples?
I think about it as an act of resistance, and it's an act of resistance because one of the things that enslaved folks were not allowed to do is to bring their art forms with them. And even in present day parts of Western and Central Africa, but definitely at the time when the transatlantic slave trade was going on, movement was life. It was everything. It was a core part of what families did. It was a core part of what communities did. It was how you celebrated. Even still, it's how you mourn. So to tell peoples that they could not move was to completely stifle them and to try to make them devoid of any type of culture. And so you see it in sort of the rhythms and the polyrhythms and the undulations and the bent knees and just every part of how you move in particular in Afro-Cuban dance is so informed by groups like the Yoruba and the Daomi and the Ijesha and the Nago and the Ketu, because those are the groups that came. So these people came and they brought who they were with them. And even though they were told that they couldn't do this, they did it. They figured how to do it. They did it through, things like syncretism, where they took the saints of Catholicism and they masked them with their own gods. And they were celebrating what looked like Catholic gods when they actually were celebrating their own gods. And all of those things have movement to it, because movement was such a core part, and still is such a core part of life on the continent, in all places, from South Africa to East Africa to West Africa to North Africa. And so when you look at the dance and the body and how the body moves because that is a part of who they are. And in boldly being who they are, just doing that was resistance.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Sophia, in terms of issues of resistance, I think you come from a very interesting place, Argentina, which is so beautiful, but also in the context of today's talk, a little complicated, because most people might assume, that this notion that there are no Blacks in Argentina is real. Dr. Robert Farris Thompson presents and argues that tango did not come from the brothels, that it comes from African townships, and that it's an African dance. And so I was wondering if you could help us understand, through your lens as an Argentinian woman, these notions of African presence in light of erasure and invisibility, to then further complicate it with notions of authenticity and identity.
Sure. What to say, unfortunately, true. Argentina and Argentine ethnomusicologists had denied for many, many years the Afro culture that was very, very important in the country, and was erased from memory in the 19th century. There are many, many documents that establish that even in Buenos Aires, there was 30% of Afro population by the time of the revolution. And of course, that is very present in the music. You mentioned tango, even the name is African. Tango is an African word. Of course, in candombe, it's very present, and there's been an incredible revival of this music in recent years, which I've been playing this music. I have a drum, one of the drums here at home. I've been learning it with many of my Argentine and Uruguayan friends here in New York. We make drum circles, and we want to learn more about this incredible legacy, because this is amazing music that's very much not known in the US or outside of the Rio de la Plata, the river that separates Argentina and Uruguay. And this is traditional music that happened on both sides of the river, same way with tango. There is a tradition of tango in Uruguay. There is a tradition of tango in Argentina. There is a very big tradition of Afro-Uruguayan drumming that is now having again a moment. And there is also the African legacy that transformed into rhythms and styles of music such as chacarera, for instance, in the north center of the country. And for many, many years, it was denied any, there were very important, very knowledgeable ethnomusicologists back home that denied any kind of presence of Afro culture in our music. And there are so many new studies that can very specifically bring the correlation between the culture and the music that came from Lima, from the African slave trade. And there was a very important center in Santiago del Estero, which happens to be the place where this drum and special style of music, chacarera, was born. There was a center a center of distribution of slaves that was massive in this area. So of course, there is no denial of the tradition and the implications of this music in so many styles. And even in the names, malambo, tango, candombe, we hear it. And it is, I'm very glad that in recent years, there's been a lot of revisions of these notions, and many people have, taking it very, taken very seriously to really dig deeper into the history and the way these styles developed into what we know today as many expressions of Argentine popular music.
Thank you so much, Sophia. And to underscore, during Latin America's colonial period, about 15 times as many enslaved Africans were taken to the Spanish and Portuguese colonies of the Americas than to the United States. So to reaffirm what Sophia is saying is that in the present day, not only in the United States among Afro-descendant Latinos, but across the Americas, we are seeing a renewed authentic embrace of their African roots and a desire to learn about their African histories. And the drum, as we noted at the top, is foundational and sacred, and as a vehicle for communication. So I'm wondering, Juan, there's so much that I want to ask you, not only about, because I do want this conversation again to be inclusive of all of the Pan-African cultures and all the African descendant cultures in the Americas. There is an American tendency to really obsess and fetishize Cuba in many ways, like the film kind of depicts, which is disturbing, right, to many of us living in the present day. So I was wondering, can you speak to not only this power of the drum as a communicator, and then speak to us about these foundational rhythms that do authentically emanate from Oriente de Cuba and Santiago de Cuba, but that we would be remiss not to shout out Haiti. So there's a lot, but I want to learn from you.
That's right. But thank you, Nita. So, I always like to start a conversation about drumming with acknowledgement of a quote that I found by a person named Mandala. And Mandala speaks about that the first sounds we all heard was when we were in our own mother's wombs, the sound of her heartbeat. And that means that we've been walking around with the pulsation of our own heartbeats. Well, the first thing we heard is that constant beat that has been with us from the moment we emerged from that womb and became living and breathing persons in this amazing world that we live in. And in that context, the fact that we are hearing beats is only re-emphasized and solidified and actually exalted and celebrated when we're talking about the incredible legacy of the African diaspora. That legacy that allows us to lose syncopation of various drum beats. It's not just a drum beat in unison that we've seen throughout indigenous influences throughout the Americas, but it's that syncopation of multiple drum beats at the same time. And when you think about it that way, that is the beauty of the incredible legacy of the African diaspora throughout the Caribbean. I study and perform the bomba and the plena of Puerto Rico, but the bomba of Puerto Rico, which is by far the oldest of all the native musics of Puerto Rico, is influenced by incredible synergies that occurred throughout the Caribbean. If you think about that incredible power, that influence, and that breadth and depth of the Haitian Revolution, then you will recognize that Haiti influenced a lot of these manifestations, first going west towards Oriente, Cuba, which, of course, Buena Vista Social Club, the documentary talks about Oriente, right? And Santiago de Cuba. And you look at it there with the manifestation of what we now call tumba francesa, which has very similar kind of dynamics to the bomba Puerto Rico. And when it goes past Quisqueya, the original name of that incredible island that now holds both Haiti and Dominican Republic, and it starts going east, it reaches the western shores of Puerto Rico from Mayagüez. And a lot of us now recognize that the development of Puerto Rico's bomba is likely east to west, from Mayagüez down to the southern coast of Ponce, Guayama, Salinas, northern coast, all the way to Arecibo and all the way into San Mateo de Cangrejos, founded by freed Blacks, and Loíza, founded by freed Blacks on the island of Puerto Rico. When you look at it in that fashion, that is an incredible legacy of both the Haitian influence after the revolution in Haiti, but also the incredible depth and really amazing way to address culture and drumming and dancing that exists in the United States, because it went all the way up to the Gulf of Mexico and reached New Orleans and influenced jazz. And it reached all the way around to the incredible parts of Mexico and Veracruz. And it reached all the way into Colombia, Panama, and Venezuela. And throughout all of that influence, we see the syncopation of drum beats that is our biggest legacy of African music into the music and dances of the Caribbean and, of course, of Puerto Rico. And that's what makes this incredible ability of us to just make these connections today and this year that have been made by the people, our ancestors, right? Our people who are before us, and they're celebrating this music in so many different ways with such richness over time. And the last thing I want to add is that in Cuba, when you look at the documentary, you recognize that Cuba, prohibited the drum, right? You talk about from the 1900s to early 1900s to the 1940s, the conga drum was prohibited as a manifestation in public spaces. We have seen similar things in Puerto Rico and other parts of the Caribbean, in which Blackness was criminalized. But when you think about Arsenio Rodriguez bringing the conga drum back into the way Arsenio wanted to create and elaborate on the song of Cuba, then we see this incredible richness of that drum one more time. And that drum is the incredible tie that ties all of us all the way through Argentina and the tango, into Brazil, into Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, and all of the Caribbean.
Thank you so much, Juan. That was incredibly beautiful. And so, I mean, we're also known for our dancing. And Sandra, I'd like to come to you, because also, the couples dancing, the partner dancing, the son, the danzón, also, I guess, plays a nod to some French, French early cultural forms. I was wondering, have you noticed how throughout the centuries there are Black movements that, whether we know it or not, survive? Like in every wedding, let's say African-American wedding, we end with the line dancing. That's kind of how folks pray, especially in Yoruba culture, right? Very organized. There's a line dancing. I was wondering if you could speak to us about, some coincidences that you find just remarkable and that continue to inspire you and your investigation into dance.
One of the things that I find so remarkable is, and it's a little bit connected to the music aspect, is really how clave is so foundational to all of the dance forms in Cuba, especially things that are like music of the people, say rumba or comparsa, changui. And clave is something that it's an African drum pattern. It is an African rhythm. It's clearly something that is directly connected to where people came from, and they brought it with them, and they found ways to change it and to hide it. But something as exciting and as free as rumba has the same foundational beat as something like danzón or even son. And what I found so interesting is how ingenious our ancestors were, that they could realize that this is something that was critical to them surviving, because, you know, as we all understand, life in being an enslaved person was not an easy life. It was super difficult. And you're in conditions where you're not at your home. You are being forced labor for someone. You don't know, who knows how many of the languages you can speak. But one thing that you can do is you can dance. And I feel like dancing is something that saved our people. It's something that allowed us to use our bodies to release the anger, the disappointment, the frustration, but also the joy. And so to me, the clave and how the clave finds itself in the body, like the undulation, kind of what Juan was saying, the undulation that you see in something like Yamvalu, which is really based in Haiti. You see it in some of the dances that are in the Orisha, that are in Afro-Cuban dance. You see it in things that are in Brazil. Mm-hmm. So it's the contortion of it to sort of keep it. And even with the contortion, everything is still based on the same rhythm, which it's just fascinating. Like it's not something that I think we think about every day, but for these things to survive, it's a massive amount of care and understanding of culture, but also the need to be and to express themselves and to ritualize their lives, even when there's no hope. Absolutely. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to dance.
And even in like the context of present day, you know, I grew up on the west side of Chicago, and I remember coming of age and going to these spaces where we would dance, and it was intergenerational. Mm-hmm. You know, there would be drug dealers, hoodlums, you know, like everybody, judges, elders, kids, all dancing in the same space. And it's an opportunity to communicate nonverbally, to really catch the vibe and the spirit and the aura of a person. And it's not sexualized. I really also am dismayed by the hypersexualization and fetishization of our movements and our cultures. But I think it's so healing to be in this intergenerational safe space where you can communicate nonverbally, and at the same time, regardless of whether you're employed or not employed, or have a job at a factory, or like first generation white collar professional, that, you know, it's a spiritual release and an opportunity to find oneself, you know, to really be comfortable in your own skin and to be. So I mean, dance is just so critical and so primordial.
And it's so freeing.
Yes, and if I can add to what Andrea just said so well, you know, dancing and bomba, there is no bomba without a dancer.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And that incredible ability of a dancer to create beats, to create music, to create the flow of bomba is critical. But Andrea, you just reminded me, there's an incredibly rich bomba that we've been singing for decades that was popularized by los Peninsula 21 out of New York City. Y dice, campo, yo vivo triste.
That's right.
Cada día sufriendo más. Ay Dios, ¿qué será de mí? Si no bailo esta bomba, me voy a morir. Wow. Campo, I live, and every day I suffer. But if I don't dance this bomba right now, I'm going to die. Yeah. I'm going to diminish myself. And that is the incredible beauty of dance, of the same traditions that we've been talking about. So Andrea, thank you for raising that, because that's exactly what we're talking about from the bomba Puerto Rico, and among other musics and drum patterns throughout the diaspora.
I think there is a common thread in terms of all these different styles of dance and music that always goes hand in hand, and the drum and the voice married, right? In all these different expressions, we can talk about plena, bomba, samba, son, so many of these expressions of music, where the lyrics sometimes need this vibrant, more festive, upbeat rhythms to really channel these very hard emotions to process of sorrow, of despair, of oppression. And, you know, a lot of people that might not speak the language might not be aware of the very, very sad lyrics of Afro sambas, or the very sad lyrics of bomba, plena, as you just put in this example. And I think it is a way of healing, right? It's a way of processing through this dance, this drumming, this more upbeat expressions, the very, very difficult stories and the very difficult feelings that so many of these communities had to go through historically.
Yeah, I'd also just quickly like to add to just how heroic, you know, these ancestors were to, in the midst of all of this, be so bold as to say, you can make me, you know, you can take me from my homeland, you can strip me of my language, you can you know, make me do things that are inhumane and do things to me that are inhumane, but what you won't do is you won't take away my song, you won't take away my drums, you won't take away my dance, because that is life for me. I don't know what is life for you people, but for me, it's this holy trinity of the drum, the voice, and the song, and the dance.
And the palmas, yeah.
And I will do it till I die.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
It's just so powerful.
Very powerful.
It is so powerful. And then I'm hoping, Sophia, that before we wrap up soon, I think we're approaching like in 10 or 12 minutes. But if you can help us further interrogate, problematize, you know, because our expressions, like we mentioned earlier, are fetishized, objectified, codified. You know, they want to see us through the Western supremacist white gaze. And oftentimes contemporary expressions and iterations and innovations are not appreciated and valued. Like, you know, we are here in 2023 living in the flesh. We are not behind a vitrine. We are not an anthropological museum. So I'm hoping that you could share some reflections and concerns that you and your peers discuss amongst yourself around these notions of innovation and authenticity.
I think that's a very important conversation. The basis of what I do as an artist has had always a big connection in terms of researching and honoring folk traditions of South America in particular, but Latin America in general, but also about vocal experimentation, about new technologies, about crossovers with electronic music and jazz improvisation. And I think for me, it has been always really crucial to find that real connection to who I am in the present moment, and fight how I am going to be perceived, or where people might want to place me. So fight as all the different identities that I have as a Latina, as an Argentine, as an immigrant, as a woman, as a daughter, as a teacher, as a global citizen now, that once was a local citizen. And I find that authenticity is sometimes at odds with what some audiences or those who present the music, or those gatekeepers want to see in us, the artists. And, you know, reflecting on this movie, I remember when Buena Vista Social Club came out, I remember enjoying so much the music, and it was a big discovery for me, because even from Argentina, being in Argentina, Latin America, I didn't know so much about Cuban music at the time. And to me, it was a discovery that instilled curiosity and led me to a lot, of other artists and expressions of music from Cuba that I had no idea. But this was the representation of a Cuba that doesn't exist anymore, that no longer exists, that and very little of what has been happening in Cuban music after the 60s is known outside of Cuba. And it kind of contributed to a mythology of Havana and these black and white portraits and the Cuban cigars and the musicians. It kind of tended to also opaque the recent history or the actual music that is happening right now in Cuba. Very few people know about Cuban hip hop, for instance, and there are some incredible artists making incredible music, or Cuban funk music, or different expressions that have always incorporated roots music, but are pushing things into the future and being more representative of the stories of now, right? And I think there is this more touristic exoticizing, I don't know how to say that word, vision that helps to create a little bit more of a rigid idea or a fixed idea of what Latin culture should be from different places. It should be fun, it should be danceable, it should be upbeat music. If you're a woman making Latin music, it should be hot, and you should wear vibrant colors and a flower on your hair. And so I always found myself conflicted with this reality, and this happened to me and many of my colleagues throughout, in situations in different music festivals or in different presentations where people wanted to portray Latin music, and I would be asked some crazy things such as, okay, now, are you going to be wearing the skirts or the colored, and I'm like, no, I didn't bring my poncho, I didn't bring my mate, I have it here, but I didn't bring it to the performance. And that doesn't mean that I am less authentic. Authenticity lies on how closer you can represent yourself right now in this given moment. And again, it's to me is kind of like an open fight for to deal with my own identity. And I know, so many of my colleagues are discussing this, and there are so many amazing artists that are bringing these different traditions forward, discussing topics that are more relevant to us now in 2023, and that make us also relate to these lyrics, in a better way, and recognize those topics, those fights. I can think of people, and I would encourage you to check out some of this music. Daimea Rosena, incredible artist from Cuba, who's really, bringing something very, very new, yet she's a master of timba and rumba and traditional music. But, she also heard and is aware and is incorporating all these different kinds of music. Danae in Cuba, Telmari, Pedrito Martinez, Ibe. People in New York, Cesar Tejeda, Dominican guitarist, who's also doing super interesting things with Dominican music. Xenia França in Brazil, Emicida, Mireya Ramos, Mariachi Flor de Toloache, bringing also contemporary expressions of mariachi music mixed with R&B and soul music. And in New York, also Combo Chimbita, artists from Colombia that are really doing Afro-Colombian music. That are really, pushing the envelope and creating something new. So I don't know, I think of myself as needing to open up, my ears, my heart and my mind into, all these different expressions that are happening right now all throughout Latin America, that are mixing, again, Afro-Latin music with contemporary expressions of so many other things that are part of our culture, our collective culture and our global culture, and deserve a space in the scene and deserve more visibility, and that have something very interesting to offer.
Yeah, because time is not necessarily linear, right? And there's different notions on African concepts of time, past, present, future, living at once. or the past informing the present, and the future being a set of possibilities that our actions and behaviors can also kind of help manifest. But something also that the film does is, it freezes in time, like you said, in a very problematic way. This notion, not that elements of it are not real, but for me, it raises, this complication around gatekeepers and also the tensions and limitations of when culture becomes commodity. Because here we are, we're at the precipice of the browning of America, a majority minority, quote unquote, minority nation. I don't never allow my students to use the word minority, but we see, these tendencies through the banning of books, quite literally. I mean, we live in a nation that's banning Toni Morris, and so that in a way, I feel that in, like the surveillance that you brought up into the conversation, that it wants to hinder our right to be and our right to be free. So how do we kind of learn from our African ancestors, this resistance that we inherit to fight the tendencies of commodification, and so that we can be our full authentic selves for ourselves. And it's complicated, right? Because we live in a capitalist nation. So how do we create space for ourselves to be ourselves and also kind of thrive in the world, not only in community because we need to be there for one another, but also sometimes to survive because we too should have a right to be able to earn a decent wage, bringing all the knowledge to the table. So kind of thinking about culture, like when culture becomes a commodity, I'm just wondering if you want to share any thinking around that.
I think a lot of it has to do with being aware, very aware of who we are and what our history is and where we're standing, where we're coming from, because that will teach us our path towards the future. I think a lot of these topics and even this idea of authenticity or non-authenticity comes from ignorance of others. And I think if we embrace who we are and stand solidly in our ground and are aware of where we come from, and we are open-minded in hearing other people's stories, again, with an open, without interfering. It's very hard because we all have biases. We all have lenses that, were maybe placed by others in front of us, but we do have to make that effort. I think we have to be conscious of it. We have to make that effort, that extra effort to be listeners, to be open, to be to really literally listen to what others have to say and then taking it in without, pushing whatever version we made in our minds prior to whatever encounters we might have. So I think that's very important. It is something that we all have to cultivate.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. I just want to address Lisanda. I'm really grateful for your comment. And I know that I used that word, and I know I used it intentionality only because we're living in a under hypervigilance, under surveillance, and just kind of to drive that notion home. But absolutely, we are a global majority. But like what I challenge the students, my students, for example, is, it's our job to have the courage to unlearn, these mythologies that were sold to us as histories, and that how are we going to work together to envision a better future for all of us? Like, what kind of world do we want to live in? Because if we want to support an apartheid culture, like, hello, they're really trying to win.
Absolutely.
And even though we don't name it as such, we just have to look at how the laws are falling, right, for our community. So I guess I just, it's 8 o'clock on the nose. I am so humbled and grateful. I want to invite the speakers to share any thoughts, and I also want to invite the audience that's beginning to chime in to let us know if you have any questions for the panelists.
One
and
of the
invite the like I said, the guests to share any thoughts.
One of the things that I when we were preparing for this, I said this, and I wanted to make sure I said it to the larger group, is that the winners are the writers of history. And so we have to be very intentional about who we are, whose we are, where we came from. And also we need to be in the driver's seat for where we're going. Right. And sometimes it's not going to look like what other people think it's going to look like. But as Sophia was saying, you have to just be yourself, and you have to know who you are and use that kind of as your compass as you go forward. And as far as culture, we're not in competition with anyone. We're just working on being who we are and creating the world that we want to see. And don't let anyone tell us that we can't. That's I mean, I know that's very but I wouldn't be who I am today, where I am today, if I didn't decide that I wanted to be, because there were so many things about who I was and what I looked like when I first came up in this country, because I was born here. I wouldn't be here. I decided that this is who I was going to be. And we have to decide our culture is important. We have to decide our culture is worth being, kind of what Sophia said. You know, don't let someone who's a PhD in this or whatever tell you that who you are and what you come from is not important, because their ignorance and their hubrisness is not going to deter us. That's the last thing that I wanted to say.
Well, I shade to that, sister.
That's right. That's right. So, the fact that, if I can add, Nate, that no, we're not going to be stopped at the end of the day. And I love Sophia's reference to authenticity, because as you probably all know in this audience, the Puerto Rican diaspora is now larger within the 50 states than it is in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And as we continue to celebrate Plena, which was the product of incredible migration of Black people into Puerto Rico, into the southern parts of Ponce, right, and working class neighborhoods of that area, and that created Plena. And then we celebrate something as rich and diverse as Bomba with 400 plus years of history. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The bottom line is that we are performing, expressing our art exactly in a way that's supposed to happen, because we are influenced by all the incredible culture and music around us in the diaspora, and that's what makes it so vibrant and so contemporary today. So I really appreciate the fact that we were able to bookend these conversations about not just history, but also contemporary manifestations and expressions of art.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And Sophia, you're just fierce and fabulous. Give me more.
Well, it's been really a pleasure. And thank you really for these important conversations. Thank you for providing the space, and thank you for having us.
Yeah. So audience, do you have any questions? NJPAC, again, you know, these the politics of the day are frightening. We're being terrorized. Our ways of being, both like in the times of enslavement and today, are being challenged, and we are a threat. But we are stronger together and united. We are one. We have Mama Africa and the beat of Africa to thank for that. So let's think about our primordial heartbeat and how that unifies us as a people to be better. Mm-hmm. And I will look to NJPAC. Let's see. We have one more question there. Sorry. Hard to do both at the same time.
There are questions in the Q&A, Nada.
Oh, okay, so hold up. I didn't see them. Let's see. Where are they? Let's see. Can you read them?
I can read them.
Okay, can you do that, please? I'm not.
So this comes from Gina. My name is Gina Andrade, and I'm the Director of Operations at Latino Action Network Foundation. Our organization is currently working on a project called Our Voices, which aims to raise awareness of Afro-Latinos within the Latino community. As part of this project, we're conducting interviews with members of the community, and we would love to invite you to share your experiences of what it means to be Afro descent in the Latin community. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm going to copy that email because I'm not sure everybody can see it. And I'm going to copy, actually, if you don't mind, Gina, I can copy your entire message on the chat so that everybody can. Yeah. Yes? All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophia. I was reading in the wrong column.
No problem.
I was looking at the webinar chat, sorry. So from an anonymous attendee, we say, powerful conversation. Our organization included our Latina brothers and sisters in our annual Kwanzaa program. We did get a lot of pushback. Question is, how do we continue to do this in a way where we are educating all and demonstrating commonality? We have a common heritage and culture. I guess Andrea or Juan, you want to take that?
I think I won't have an answer. I'm sure Juan will have an answer as well. But I think doing things like this and just keep educating people, I think the more people are educated and understand their similarities, the easier it is to see that the differences aren't as large as they think they are. And I have a whole theory as to why the differences are very heightened, but that's a whole other panel.
That's another panel.
Yeah, that's another panel, but we are way more similar. The foods we eat, how we entertain each other, how our families are structured, what our communities look like, and just really work on exposing people and letting people interact in a very authentic way to see that they are similar. That was what I was.
Yeah, and I would say, look at the children. You know,
oh, absolutely,
the children. You know,
and elders.
Yeah, but the children, they're embodying multiple identities and different lineages. You know, I mean, we all do as human beings. We're not just one thing, but clearly our youth are Filipino and Puerto Rican, Black and Chinese, you know, Argentine and Puerto Rican, Jamaican, you know, so it's incumbent upon us to find a way and make a way so that our children understand that we are whole with all of this richness and complexity.
Yes, and the fact is, yes, the commonalities are much bigger, and the ability of us to express our art is incredibly important. But you know, those of us who are listening to this podcast right now, this conversation, obviously, hopefully, you are all already supporting the arts and already finding a way to force your local governments, yes, your local city councils, to set aside a piece of that budget to support local arts. Because at the end of the day, we need the large support of all of us, including our own tax dollars, to make sure that our stories, our dances, our beats, our music continues to flourish in all ways, shapes, and forms as we do this throughout the state and throughout the country.
And that's a critical reminder to be civically engaged and to participate. And everything does emanate locally, and we need the arts more than ever. Like I said earlier in a comment, we're living in a time where if we have the Grand Dame Toni Morrison being banned, we are
we're in trouble.
Ideas are at risk. So so we do need to create those spaces and learn from our African ancestors so that we can come together in a cipher and push and move culture forward. And let's see, anything else? Let's see, guys, help me here. Thank you for a wonderful program. Well, shout out to you for being here and being so welcoming and attentive. From Leslie, I have a question I don't think we addressed. What suggestions do you all have, Sofia, Andrea, Juan, what suggestions do you all have for us to get these truths to our younger generations?
I think, you know, all conversations with the younger generation, it's interesting because I am revising my entire curriculum for my new perspectives in Latin music class, because I felt that I wasn't connecting sometimes enough or as much as I would want it to with my 18, 19, 20-year-old students. And basically the best way, if we're doing it through arts, is for them to connect with some current expressions of music and people that are talking, in terms of their, their musical language or something they can relate to start the conversation. Perhaps is bringing a group that they would relate to, and then spark a conversation after that. The lyrics, again, I think a lot of it we're missing in this conversation so much about the intent in terms of the lyrics. And if you bring a rapper that's like really expressing the different hardships of their current life. It could be in a neighborhood in New York, or it could be back home. But I think somebody from the same generation would relate more, perhaps than starting from something that it feels so far away, right? Or so far removed from their experience. So I don't know, I would think, get on a playlist and, like start from there, perhaps discussing the lyrics of a song. Actually, it's not a bad idea. It could be a good idea to spark the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So Kimbamba, Segundo Kimbamba has been really active in public school engagement for the last maybe 5 years by now. And that means we are literally going to elementary schools and high schools all over the state and into Eastern Pennsylvania as well. Support from young audiences and other groups like that, Hudson County, et cetera, and Jersey City. But the bottom line is this: we do it through dance, Sophia, and in dance,
100%.
it is incredible how we can adapt the dynamic relationship between the bomba drummer and the dancer to any form of dance. And when you look at it that way, the expressiveness of our juventud, of young people, is right front and center. And we always let them know, dance whatever you feel like dancing. We'll find a way to incorporate it into these rhythms, and that's what we do. And that's the beauty about that dynamic between dancing, drumming, and everything else that we're talking about in the conversation today.
Yeah, no, that's intersectional, intergenerational. I agree.
I think really connecting with young people is so important, and doing it through schools, but also doing it through community centers, finding organizations who have groups of kids that need programming. In my non-dance life, I work in an arts organization, and one of the things that we try really hard to do is, even outside of doing things in the school, we try to do community-based, because there are some kids that, the reality is the school where they live is not close, or that school doesn't have a program. So how can we reach kids, but reaching them exactly where they are, and then being willing to not have all these preconceived notions about the kids' music. I mean, I forced myself to watch an award show recently that I will not name because I need to see what is going on and see that there are different levels of someone my age might think, oh, this is so this, or this is so that. But, I made myself watch it because I need to stay plugged into what is important to the young people, what they're saying, because if I don't know what's going on, how can I even say anything to them? How can I have any perspective? And also really trying to make space for things to be intergenerational, truly intergenerational, not just an older person telling a younger person, you need to do this.
Well, creating spaces
a lot of what people think intergenerational is.
Mm-hmm. We have to create these spaces, safe spaces to share and learn together, because the youth, the research shows, and as we know, are being terrified.
Absolutely.
Are really uncertain about the world, compounding crises.
There's such an incident
in the corporate sector, the social media. you
Yep.
know, are most vulnerable. The little ones are protected, adults have a choice. The ones that are targeted are in this really vulnerable age, you know, tweens and young teens, where they're getting, you know, they're designed, the social media triggers are designed to those addictive triggers in your brain. And so there's all kinds of trauma and angst happening amongst our youth, and they're not learning how to connect, interconnect, and play in the sandbox. And that's where we, as you know, dancer, artist, educators, we can help them to find safe nonverbal ways of communicating, and dance is critical. Faith-based institutions, thank you, Leslie. Absolutely, we have to use all the spaces. We have to be intentional about being cultural ambassadors and cultural workers, all of us, because our lives depend on it.
And our cultures depend on it.
And our survival depends on it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Phyllis, for your comments. She just saw a great Latin jazz show. Yeah. So I don't know, NJPAC, I guess, you know, if you feel that the audience is satisfied, let us know and we can say thank you and have everyone join their family for dinner.
Yes, and this was amazing. Such an insightful and thoughtful and very honest conversation. So I want to just on behalf of NJPAC, give my sincere thanks to you, Nada, for being the moderator of this. This was absolutely awesome. I would also like to thank everyone on the panel for your input this evening, because again, this was a very honest and very insightful conversation. So thank you to you as well. And I would like to thank our advisors and our audience for this. And please make sure you continue to join us for such conversations, because they're important and they are imperative in today's time. So again, thank you so much. Looking forward to next month. We have other events for you to share for the Standing in Solidarity discussions. November 20th, we have a hip hop panel, which will be part 2 with Bill Stephanie. November 27th at 7 p.m., we have Identity and Misconceptions about Native Americans. And November 10th, we have Miss Omara Portuondo, original member of Buena Vista Social Club, who will be at NJPAC as a part of the TD James Moody Jazz Festival. So please look out and go into our site so that you can grab your tickets for that particular show. In the meantime, for this evening, thank you so much. And that will conclude our program for tonight. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.